because when they are plugged in, they do look pretty good.
Which hopefully you can just about see there. It has caught it, so despite it's at an upward angle, it would actually catch it with the sensors.
Hello and welcome to another video, and in this video it's time to do a side project that I've had kind of waiting in the wings. That is to make, as the title may suggest, a DareDevil echolocation style wearable tech jacket. This is something I'm sure does exist somewhere, although I couldn't actually find that many of them or many things like it at all. But the idea, the concept of this is basically to have a jacket with a bunch of sensors over there, distance sensors mounted all over it, so that if you were visually impaired, you could wear the jacket and it'd basically stop you from walking into things that detect something coming towards you, kind of like parking sensors on your car. So let's go over the plan for this mini project. So first thing, how is this going to work? So we're going to have some basic Arduino parts for this, frankly, because you can get them really cheap off AliExpress. So you've got the distance sensor that is going to sit in the middle of this sensor holder, and then for the case of this video, so you guys can see what's actually going on, we're going to have an activation LED on one side that'll help to tell us whether the sensor is detecting anything or not. And then from the point of the wearer, we're going to have a vibration motor on the right hand side. The vibration motor is going to be the opposite way around to these two sensors, so the vibration motor is basically touching the skin of the operator. And here are the sensors in question. Got the little Arduino distance sensor, or a clone of, and a vibration motor, of which I do need to invert the pins so that vibration motor is the other way around. And then we've got this nice little LED that'll fit just there. There'll then be multiple of these blocks, which then all run into an Arduino Nano, which will then have a separate power supply. And here we've got the layout as it's going to be on the piece of clothing I'm going to use. So we're going to have the Arduino and battery pack basically go out the bottom of the shirt so it can be fitted in a trouser pocket. And then we've got one sensor on the stomach and then another sensor further up the chest that's also going to be angled to hopefully detect in front of the face a bit as well. So it'll be angled up a little bit to cover the face in case you walk into anything that way. And there's going to be two shoulder mounted sensors that are facing forward in case you walk into something that's overhanging or just a doorway, something like that. And then on the upper arms, you're going to have sideways mounted sensors, while the forearms are going to have sensors that are kind of mounted on angles ideally, which should mean when you combine with all of it, you should get pretty good coverage throughout. The tricky part of this, because I'm not making custom PCBs with custom processors on each sensor block, is try to run all of this into an Arduino Nano is going to be quite a lot of wires. While I'll probably make a couple of blocks spare, I can only do 8 sensors because then I'll run out of wires. I'm already going to have the issue that I'm going to have to basically have the LED signal and the vibration motor signal on the same wire. Hopefully it'll work, but we're going to find out. Now you might be wondering, how do you get all of these pieces to essentially hang onto the shirt with the vibration motors hanging through onto the skin and then these sensors poking out? The idea is with these 3D printed parts that I prepared earlier. So they're in 2 parts, so the sensor fits in this part, for example, which then, as you can imagine, then pokes through as such. The idea is you then have these screw holes here. You can then cut the holes out of the shirt to basically allow this sensor and the LED to poke through, and then basically clamp it all down over the top with the top cover of this plate. And then the wiring loom can run on the inside and it can basically fit onto the shirt and should hold pretty securely. With that being said, we'll go on probably the quite time-consuming task of getting all of these wired up and then try the code and get it all working.
I've now got all of these sensors wired up with 1 block spare. I've also got this nice little Arduino Nano holder, and then I've started to print a battery holder, which I still need to modify a bit more to hold the DeWalt battery. So now I'll get the shirt in question out and lay out all of the sensors so I can start building the full wiring looms up and connect it all together. And with all these sensors laid out on the shirt, this is where I start to think, wow, this is going to be time consuming to try and get all of this wiring into one loom that I can actually fit underneath the shirt. But nevertheless, after quite a considerable amount of time, I did get them all wired up and it did actually look quite neat. Use some nice fleece tape to tie it all together. So now it's time to get it all tested out. You can see how it all attaches into the Arduino Nano, which of course for now will just be plugged into the laptop. While I have used these sensors plenty of times and wrote my own code in the past, I decided to use AI Grok in particular to massively speed up this process and make a more refined code where all of these sensors can work together. And this actually turned out to be a fantastic idea that saved me many hours, if not days, because I did have quite a lot of problems getting all this to work. So I was able to use Grok and basically tune the code to work correctly with the sensors, something that I could have done on my own, but it would have took a long time. Now, I won't go over the code that much at this point, because the thing is, to me, when you're going over code, you either understand it completely if you've done something with code, or you don't understand it at all if you've never touched it. So I'll talk about the problems that I had a bit more later on. However, a problem that is relevant at this point is one of the problems I had was with the LEDs and vibration motors working together. They were causing some type of interference or backfeeding that was basically making the whole thing not work correctly. But if I unplug the LEDs, the vibration motors all work correctly, and vice versa. So I did decide to basically have half of the shirt working with LEDs so that you guys hopefully can see it on camera, while half of the shirt will be working with the vibration motors, which hopefully you'll still be able to hear. But at least that way it will prove concept while working for a video. But I did think this was a little bit of a shame because, as you can see with the cover on here, it actually all looks pretty good all together, flashing green. And after some quite considerable problems, we finally have it working. Should be able to hear the vibration motors. Unfortunately though, until editing this, I didn't realise something, and that's that fast beating sound you can hear, that almost ticking sound, that is the sensors doing its echo pulse. So unfortunately, whenever any of this equipment is on, you do hear that pulsing. Although it is pretty cool to hear and hear how fast it's actually working. Now it's time to try on the shirt and actually work out exactly where these sensors are fitting.
This is the item of clothing that I've gone for. It's a GYMSHARK Vital Seamless Quarter Zip. The reason why I went for this is, one, it's in quite the nice fetching DareDevil red colour, matches the video, but also because I knew it'd fit pretty well, as all GYMSHARK generally does. Reason that's important for this video is I wanted to make sure that the vibration motors would always be in contact basically with my skin and they wouldn't be flopping around inside a loose jacket or something. However, a small problem is this is a size large, it fits very well around the arms and everything. However, one, I have managed to increase my strength back up pretty well in the gym. However, I'm not really at the cutting phase, so I am still a little bit fat for things like this. However, the bigger issue is I've got to fit a wiring loom under this. So I have had to kind of like stretch this out a little bit around the waist and around the chest to try and make sure there's actually going to be enough room for all of these wires to fit under it. Once the wiring loom's under it, all the sensors are on, then you can just put the battery and Arduino into the pocket, of which for this video at least I'll be wearing work trousers because you can just nicely slot it in down there. With that being said, let's destroy the warranty and start cutting holes into this. I have just realised that I'm better off marking all this up with the shirt on, of course, so I have just put tape where these sensors are going to go, so you've kind of got an idea there. Hopefully I'll manage to make it look all symmetrical.
And here is how I attached those sensor blocks. Basically cut the holes and then turned the shirt inside out, pushed the block through from the back and then turned it inside out to then clamp the top cover on and then screw it all down, with some bolts that nicely tap their own threads into that 3D printed plastic. It was quite fiddly and quite time consuming, which is why I didn't bother to film the entire process of me fitting these in all the different places. As you can see, they did all turn out pretty well, and they even turned out looking pretty symmetrical as well. The wiring loom ran surprisingly nicely, all the way down into the Arduino with the new battery holder that holds both the Arduino and the battery quite neatly, ready to pop into a pocket. I did also make sure to glue gun all of the terminals for the wires onto the actual sensors themselves, just to make sure they wouldn't come off as I'm turning the shirt inside out and trying it on. Something that I haven't mentioned yet that you might be wondering about is what distance do these sensors basically work to, and when do they actually activate the vibration motors? Well, I think these sensors are good for about 1.5 meters. You would be able to get better ones as well. The problem is twofold for me. One, these sensors can get a bit more unreliable at ranges, and these being cheap sensors, I kind of don't want to push my luck on that. And two, for actually filming this video, if I've got to be 1.5 meters away from anything that's detected, that does actually make it quite difficult to film and show the sensors actually working. It's already going to be quite difficult to pick up the vibration motors and the LEDs as it is. So for the sake of this video, these sensors basically activate the vibration motors at 30 centimeters. However, if you were to use it in any real world circumstance, you could obviously have it activate much further away. And I've now got it all fixed on.
with it turned on in my pocket down here. And it does actually work pretty well. I'm actually quite surprised at how well it works. So if I put my hand over there, you should be able to see the LED there. Hopefully you'll pick this up on the audio of the camera.
I thought I'd better do a voiceover because of how badly that is pinging the microphone. So we've got the LEDs on the left hand side, as you can see, and then on the right hand side you've got the vibration motors. And you can see from the center LED it does actually work up at an angle pretty well. So as planned it would cover the face.
I'll try going into my garage so I can actually try film this better. This is a really difficult thing to show on a camera of it actually working, but we'll try something else. So as it's only set to 30 centimeters, right now where I'm stood, nothing's going off. As I walk past the toolbox, I have that one set off and that one set off as well. And then if I rotate, the shoulder one goes off as well, as planned. So I'm going to open this drawer up and then we'll see if the front sensor, this chest sensor, does actually look up and catch it like I hope it should. And hopefully you'll see the LED. And there the LED comes on, so it does actually detect the drawer, which is at least getting up to head height. And you can imagine if you set the sensor to basically work further out, then it would detect something in front of your face. Now I've already got this covered in dust in this garage, we'll be trying this drawer and see if the vibration motor on this sensor goes off, which hopefully you'll hear. Already going off there. So something these sensors are good for is that they don't just have like a straight vision, they do have a widened vision the further out you get. So you can detect more with a small amount of sensors like what I've got here. Now hopefully you'll be able to hear these sensors on my arm going off on the toolbox constantly. But then if I turn, we go away. Rotate back round, turn on. And then rotate towards the toolbox and we're back on again. I can now use this project car that my dad bought, put in my garage, that is probably never going to fix, to basically demonstrate the plus of using an ultrasonic sensor over, say, a light sensor. And that is that it does see glass and will reflect off glass. So while you do have to put up with annoying pinging from the sensors pinging microphones, at least these sensors don't see through glass or water like a light sensor does. As after all, if you were going to make a low vision jacket that would basically allow you to walk into glass, that would be a problem. And I think this is probably the best way to test the shoulder pieces. So you see the LED has come on the left one, and then you can hear it vibrating on the right one. And you can also see how the bar's in front of my face. So again, angling these at different angles would tell you that you're going to hit your face without actually having to have a sensor on your face, while still catching anything that might hit on your shoulders.
While also the battery holder and Arduino holder worked out pretty well, it's just about the right size to fit into these work trousers, like so.
Now I hope you could all see that well enough to see it all working and functioning correctly. It was extremely difficult to film on my own. Try to get it all at the right angle where hopefully you can hear the vibration motors, but yet also see the LEDs when they do flash on. I'm actually pretty pleased at how all this turned out to work, and even it's actually pretty comfortable. Like to say, I've got a really big wiring loom underneath this shirt. It actually doesn't feel too bad. I've also got pretty good flexibility all the way around. It doesn't feel like it's actually stopping me from doing anything. However, I will now shut the vibration motors up and take the battery out. Now, of course, this is just a concept, just like a random prototype. You'd have to do a lot more than this to actually bring it to market or get it into proper use. But what are my thoughts on improving it further? I think really what you need to do is you need to have the processor of an Arduino Nano or something similar built into each individual unit. That way it'd be much easier for the Arduino Nano to do because you'd have a lot of them. You are kind of pushing the capabilities, in my opinion, of an Arduino Nano on its own with this many sensors. And because each sensor block essentially works redundantly on its own, it's not like you need them to talk to each other or go to a central module. I did also have concerns at one point about basically having the vibration motor attached to the ultrasonic sensor directly, thinking that vibration might cause an issue. I did see some minor fluctuations in the readings it were giving out on the serial monitor, but not actually that much.
So I suspect you could actually integrate a sensor with a processor, with a vibration motor and an LED if you wanted to. That way as well, you wouldn't have this big wiring loom running through it all. You would just have power cables, 5 volt most likely, just to go to all the sensors. That way you could just have like a regular power bank in your pocket, like a phone size. This is of course something I couldn't make or manufacture on my own, so I will put all of the designs and everything on the free member part of Patreon in case anyone wants it. And while I was editing, I almost forgot what were those problems with the code. So the main issues I was having was basically most likely a difference in quality between different sensors, and what that meant for the code was because these sensors measure everything using basically a time delay, so measuring in microseconds. Because a microsecond is a millionth of a second, the slightest quality difference between each one of these sensors can mean that the code just doesn't work full stop. So I ended up having to use Grok to basically alter each of the microsecond delays until the trigger pin and the echo pin would basically reset itself. Because what appeared to be happening, at least, was that the trigger pin would send out a pulse and then the echo pin would receive it, and then the trigger pin would try to send out another one before the echo pin had basically reset. Now on some of the sensors it worked, because on the data sheet for the sensors, one of the delays I think is like 10 microseconds. But to get it to work on all of the sensors, again assuming some of the quality was a little bit off on some of the sensors, that had to be down at 50 microseconds. But at the same time, you've got to kind of tune it to the minimum as possible, because there's multiple delays. So if you just start adding like 1,000 microsecond delays to everything, bearing in mind you've got 8 sensors in this loop that all have to run as part of the code loop. If you have 2 higher delays, then you have a massive lag on the whole system where it just doesn't work practically at all. Now, using Grok, using AI, saved me a massive amount of time running through those things, because again, Grok can literally just find all of the data sheets for all of the electronics that exist immediately like that and implement any decisions that it thinks it needs to make the code work better. Whereas that would literally take me days to do. With that being said, on that free member part of Patreon, I will be putting the correct code that worked in case anyone wants to use it. Which, to be honest, if you're trialing anything Arduino with these little sensors and you're trying more than one, you might want to take a look at it just to see what these delays are and everything, especially if you're having problems. But with that said, the next video will be back onto the exoskeleton, onto the spine, either coming out this week or next week. Which, for anyone new to the channel, what I'm typically doing is building a powered armoured exoskeleton similar to the prototype you can see behind me. But enough of the waffling, please like and subscribe if you like the video, and thank you for watching, and I hope to see you on the next one.